The Nexus was a Comstar upgrade to an old Star League design, the Jackrabbit. He was glad they changed the name. The Nexus was a lean, humanoid mech, small compared to Helena's massive exterminator, yes, but a tough, scrappy mech nonetheless. It didn't look like any kind of rodent. With its knife blade head and its sleek canopy, it looked more like a velociraptor wearing wraparound sunglasses. The story of Comstar's 25-ton Nexus battlemech is deeper than one might first assume at a glance in the Rec Guide 23. It covers 3 different battlemech designs with 3 different names, but sharing a common desire to create a light mech that could punch above its weight and scuttle away before receiving return fire. Today we look at the Nexus and take a few moments to appreciate Comstar for bringing us a plucky battlemech that was an inspiration across hundreds of years of history across both Inner Sphere and the clans. It's quite the tale, so let's get started. Those well-versed in the BattleTech history can regale you with the tale of Amaris' coup and Kerensky's valiant yet ultimately doomed attempt to hold the Star League together. At the macro level, it's a fascinating story of grand armies and leaders with egos as big as their battlemechs. But as a history guy, I've always been more interested in the nitty-gritty details of an event. I have frequently said that history is often made by ordinary individuals as often as by powerful leaders. The corporal who skips the battle to drink, leading to a devastating defeat, the assassin on a street corner that stops to get a sandwich and ends up just in the right place at the right time for the rerouted czar, a security guard who notices a piece of tape on a security door which would end a presidency, and even a 29-year-old social worker who joined an underground organization to smuggle 3,000 children from a Warsaw ghetto. All of these people, for good or bad, had big impacts on history. Most were not aware of just how big a role they would play in the human story. It's fascinating to think about all those decisions and how countless new decisions are made every day. But this isn't a philosophy or history class, so let's get to it. At the dawn of the fight between Amaris and the SLDF, a new battlemech was just barely reaching the preliminary testing phase of its development. The mech was called the Jackrabbit, and its designers had high hopes for their 25-ton design. Just 2 years before the Amaris coup, the Scobell Mechworks on Terra had envisioned the Jackrabbit as a low-cost, easy-to-maintain, and potent light mech. All available data suggested they were on the right track. Following the coup, the change of leadership on Terra resulted in many frantic shifts and programs being accelerated in order to produce weaponry. The Jackrabbit was greenlit and put into production before it had cleared all of the testing hurdles. The Armstrong JJ Light Autocannon 2 and Holly Streak SRM2 were functional, but in the story as old as time, it was only realized through combat that the AC2 could be largely ignored by everything that could chase the Jackrabbit down. As Kerensky battled his way closer to Terra, 500 Jackrabbits were produced for Amaris' forces. Subsequently, they were hunted down by the SLDF mechs of all weights and loadouts, as the Jackrabbit could do little to stop them. The debacle of the Jackrabbit certainly contributed to the fall of Amaris, as it sapped resources from weapon systems that would have actually been useful. Historical documents state that the SLDF soldiers made light of their Jackrabbit hunts. It was simply too lightly armed and too slow to stay alive on the modern battlefield. When Terra was liberated, the SLDF shuttered the Jackrabbit factory, and none of the surviving mechs were incorporated into Kerensky's forces. The whole project and the battlemech that had shown so much promise was over. No Jackrabbits made it into the Exodus fleet, and the entire affair was swept into the dustbin of history. It wouldn't be until 3054, when Comstar was desperate to recuperate from the damage caused by the costly battle against the clans on Tukid, that the Jackrabbit would get a second look. The production lines had long been dormant, and Precentor Marshal Anastasius Vogt believed that the mech could be improved upon without requiring significant reconfiguration of the factories. The battlemech, christened the Nexus, would receive a new 200 Nissan engine that would vastly improve the mech's speed, as well as a new weapons loadout which would be much more appropriate for the 25-ton Striker battlemech. The production lines in what used to be known as Russia were restarted, and the legacy of the Jackrabbit would continue, at least in spirit if not name. With a max speed of 129.6 kilometers per hour and Rawlings 55 jump jets that allowed it to jump up to 150 meters, the Nexus was swift and agile, directly addressing one of the major concerns with the Jackrabbit. The Scobell 100 ROB endosteel frame saved precious tonnage while also creating a strong backbone for the mech systems. The Exeter long-scan 200 communication system was reliable, and the Garrett T-15AJ targeting and tracking system was known for being easy to maintain and could easily handle the rapid pace of a light mech scooting in and out of enemy fire. The 2 tons of Krupp 200 armor provides modest protection from light arms, but anything larger than a small laser is going to penetrate most locations on the Nexus. The name of the game for this mech is to avoid fire rather than tanking it. For perspective, the Stinger 5R has 3 tons of armor, and the Locust 5M has 4 tons. Stay away from mechs armed with pulse lasers if you're a Nexus pilot. They will ruin your entire day. Thankfully, the Nexus's loadout does help a little bit with the survivability of the BattleMech. The 10 double heatsinks are useful because the AC-2 and Streak SRM-2 from the Jackrabbit have been scrapped. In their place, the mech is armed with a standard medium laser in the left arm, 2 medium pulse lasers in the right arm, 2 standard small lasers split between the 2 arms, and an anti-missile system nestled into the left torso. The AMS is appreciated. As we've previously mentioned, you do not want to be taking fire in this thing. As far as weapons go, it has a good mix of lasers that cover the short range well, up to 9 hexes with the standard medium laser. I just realized we've been covering so many clan mechs on this channel, I can't remember the last time I talked about a mech with a standard medium laser on it. Good times. All of this added up to a mech with a solid punch of up to 23 damage, which isn't too shabby for a 25-ton battle mech. Early production runs of the Nexus were distributed quickly to ComGuard units like the 4th Army's 366th Division, which had been on the receiving end of Clan Wolf's curiously effective attacks during Tukiad. The Nexus ended up being piloted mostly by new ComGuard recruits, as the mech was nimble, easy to learn, and most importantly of all, comparatively inexpensive to other battle mechs. Overall, the Nexus proved to be somewhat useful, with consideration given to its light armor. For more aggressive Mechwarriors who like to live on the knife's edge, the Nexus was an attractive option. Unfortunately, many saw the lack of armor to be too serious a problem to ignore, as the lifespan of a light mech pilot is already shorter than that of other Mechwarriors. This contributed to a mech developing a bad reputation. 8 years later, the Nexus would receive a significant upgrade with the Nexus 1B. The most important addition being 4 tons of ferrofibrous armor added to the mech, which directly addressed the mech's most glaring flaw. Now, the opportunity cost for this was paid with a reduction in offensive power, but the goal of the 1B was to create an effective scouting unit rather than act as a speedy striker. The ER medium laser in each arm gave the Nexus 1B a good reach out to 12 hexes, and the ER small laser was a modest insurance policy should anyone get too close. The addition of an improved C3 computer offers the benefits of a combined master-slave unit in a single mech, for better accuracy of anyone tied into the network. Nexus 1Bs could spot for extremely long-range fire of fire support mechs at the range of the Nexus instead. I really like the 1B, though I understand when players are a bit wary of the C3 stuff. It's a very overcomplicated system and often not worth the headache. If you're a big fan of the C3, sorry. The deployment of the Nexus 1B led quickly to an effort to rethink the design in a more substantial way. In a mech that would be named the Nexus 2 in 3066, the word of Blake spared no expense. The 2 most notable changes were the replacement of the engine with a Vox LE 200 light engine, which brought additional weight, and the 3.5 tons of armor. The top speed of the Nexus 2 was pushed up to 130 km per hour, which also improved the likelihood of a Mechwarrior surviving a battle. The jump jets were retained, as well as the improved C3 system from the 1B. For weaponry, the Nexus 2 sported a pair of ER medium lasers and 2 ER small lasers, each split between the left and right arms. The final result was a mech that was well-rounded and could act as a scout or still do up to 16 damage in a turn with its Alpha Strike. Not too shabby. Just 1 year later, in 3067, the Nexus 2B was added to the Word of Blake roster. It pulled the jump jets and the ER small lasers from the standard Nexus 2 and remodeled the mech into an information warfare design, with all the bells and whistles. In addition to the improved C3, the 2B carried a Guardian ECM in the right torso, a Beagle active probe in the left torso, and target acquisition gear in the head. With just the 2 ER medium lasers for defense, the Nexus 2B was always tied to groups with other lights or relying upon the ECM to keep it away from enemy eyes. The Word of Blake's 3rd Division collected many of the 2Bs first produced by the end of 3066 and used them to shield their nefarious actions. Following the end of the Word of Blake kerfuffle, much of their unique and strange technology was tainted by association. This included the Nexus, which came close to being completely forgotten in the rush to move on from the conflict. It wouldn't be until 3140 with Malcolm Buell's attempt to save the remnants of the Comguard that the Nexus would see a revival. Seeking to address the growing concern of infantry and combined armed units, the Nexus C was built to clear out threats quickly and escape before taking fire. Once again sporting the light engine and 4 jump jets, the Nexus C remains quite agile while still being able to devote the remaining tonnage to a decent selection of weaponry. The primary weapons are a pair of standard medium lasers split between the arms and a medium re-engineered laser located in the left arm. All 3 of these lasers share a range table out to 9 hexes, but that re-engineered laser does 1 additional damage. Backing up the medium lasers are a pair of small X-pulse lasers and an anti-missile system in that left torso. The build is heat neutral even with all the lasers, though that medium re-engineered laser feels a little out of place and is of questionable use with its double heat generation for 1 additional damage over the standard medium laser. I suspect it's a situation where, lore-wise, it makes sense because they just have these lasers laying around and they gotta use them. The overall damage for a successful Alpha Strike is 22, which is considerable, though a little unlikely at all but the closest ranges. Of all of the variants, I'm most fond of the Nexus 1B, and the Nexus 2 to some extent, because they feel like the best examples of fulfilling the goal of creating a striker 25-tonner that can get in and out of trouble quickly. If you're running a Comguard or Word of Blake army, I would definitely look into the Nexus. Now, at the beginning of the video, I mentioned the Nexus was inspiring across the clans as well. That's because our dear little plucky friend, the Nexus, was the basis for a 25-ton clan mech named the Star Python. In fact, their names have become pretty much interchangeable. First spotted amongst the Goliath Scorpion Tumen in 3150, the Star Python is a Nexus 2C in everything but name. Built into an Imperial 1A endosteel frame, the Antwerp 175 Fusion engine can propel this 25-tonner at a respectable 118 km per hour. The Rawlings 55 jump jets allow the Star Python to leap up to 120 meters at a time, and the 4.5 tons of compound row reflective armor provide good protection for the light mech. The producer Imperial Battle Mechs on Braunschweig, which is a planet in the deep periphery now within what is called the Scorpion Empire, long story, is producing the Star Python in great numbers to build up the meshed clan inner-sphere hybrid state. The motivation for choosing this specific mech over others isn't clear, but it may be a matter of simple convenience in using the production facilities that already existed to make something new. Though not immediately intimidating outside those who have seen it in action, the snake which inspired the mech's name is known for being a pack hunter which rips flesh from its intended victims rather than constricting movement like the old Terran pythons. Though battle-ROM footage of the Star Python in action is rare, it's a fair assumption that the Scorpions plan on using the speedy light in a similar manner as its namesake, with packs descending upon their enemies, quickly firing and scurrying away while the target flails and tries to return fire. One unverified report suggested the Scorpions may already have up to a trinary of the Star Pythons available to carry out hit-and-run style warfare. Other reports have included details of significant wins against pirate groups that operate in the space near the Scorpion Empire holdings. As with previous Nexus designs, the Star Python is equipped with a collection of clan energy weapons and an anti-missile system. Finally, after several videos, we get to talk again about heavy lasers, as this mech has 2 medium improved heavies split between the left and right arms. They're paired with 2 ER micro lasers for close range fighting, and the left arm carries an ER medium laser. It's an interesting mix of weapons, primarily a danger at close range. Those improved heavy lasers are not terrible, but keep in mind those capacitors explode like an ammunition explosion if hit. It's one of those things where you have to do the math and say, I'm probably going to die if I'm hit no matter what, so what's the additional risk if I add the explodey lasers? The 10 double heat sinks cover the increased heat generation, and a full Alpha Strike would do 31 damage. It's up to you to decide if the juice is worth the squeeze on this one. The weapons loadout is fine, the reflective armor can be neat, and running 11 hexes isn't too shabby. I like the combination of anti-missile system and reflective armor. I want to see that more often. For 1200 battle value, give the Star Python a shot and see what happens. Either way, it'll probably be entertaining. As always, I did decide to do a Mechfrog refit of the Star Python just for fun, and to offer something a little different from the other possibilities of Nexus and Jackrabbit. Behold the Star Python MF. My mission was to create a variant that could back up the others with some longer range options, while still being able to carry out its original task of being a speedy striker. I kept the 4.5 tons of ferrofibrous armor and the endosteel, but went one step further with an XL engine to buy additional tonnage for weaponry. I think I have accomplished the goal of creating something dangerous at long and short ranges through the use of the 3 advanced tactical missile 3 systems placed in the right arm along with 2 tons of ammunition, 1 extended range and 1 high explosive. Adding that 3rd ton of ammunition was tempting, but it would leave no other space for other weaponry, which I'm not keen on doing. That last little bit of weight was devoted to 4 micro-pulse lasers in the left arm to help deal with infantry, battle armor, and anyone who might wander into the Star Python's chow zone. If you're up for giving it a shot, I've attached the PDF and a Dropbox link in the video comments. Overall, I really like the various permutations of the Nexus, Star Python, and even the Jackrabbit. It's an interesting mech with a fun backstory and some useful variants. What more could anyone ask for? Besides, maybe the Scorpion Empire can invade the Wolf Empire. That may be a pipe dream. Before we go, I want to point out that there is a fun story in a BattleCore issue where the Nexus makes a prominent appearance. A Comguard Mechwarrior named Kovachev lands on Terra along with his unit, but faces a stronger than expected Word of Blake resistance. At one point in the story, he is forced to outmaneuver and try to take down a Thunderbolt in among sandstone outcroppings. I won't spoil the story or the ending, but it's worth checking out if you want to see what the lore states a Nexus can accomplish with a little skill and a lot of luck. The story is titled A Loyal Son of Terra by Stephen Mohan Jr., so check it out. Thanks for coming by today and hanging out to talk BattleTech. If you've known about the Nexus and used it in your Comguard armies or Word of Blake armies, let me know how it went. I may have to try this one next time my son brings his king crab out. As always, if you hit all the buttons, it'll make YouTube's algorithm happy and hopefully share the video with others who haven't seen the channel yet. If you take the extra step and become a channel member, you'll know that you are directly supporting more BattleTech content like this. So until we meet again, take care and go out and make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.